In under 30 minutes, Britain lost its last real chance to hold Virginia. By E.T.T. Wool, Virginia's royal governor, Lord Dunmore, watched his authority crumbling as revolutionary sentiment spread rapidly through the colony's plantations and towns. Tensions exploded that spring when Dunmore secretly removed gunpowder from Williamsburg's magazine, fearing colonial militia might use it against royal authority. Facing growing hostility, Dunmore abandoned the capital entirely and took refuge aboard a British warship anchored safely off the Virginia coast. From that ship, Dunmore made a decision that shocked plantation owners across the colony. He offered freedom to enslaved people who joined the British cause. Hundreds answered that call, forming what became known as Lord Dunmore's Ethiopian Regiment, fighting under British colors in exchange for their freedom. Virginia's slaveholding elite reacted with genuine panic. Dunmore's proclamation did more to unite Virginia against the Crown than almost anything that came before it. Virginia's Revolutionary Convention rapidly organized militia forces in response. Colonel William Woodford took command of Virginia's growing military resistance to royal authority. Dunmore, meanwhile, established a fortified position near Norfolk at a strategic crossing point called Great Bridge, guarding the main route into the city. British forces built a small stockade fort on one side of the crossing, manned by regular troops, loyalist militia, and Dunmore's newly formed regiment. Colonial forces established their own position directly across the narrow causeway, separated from the British garrison by barely 100 yards of open water. Dunmore, confident in his regular troops and increasingly desperate for a decisive victory, began planning an assault against the colonial position across the bridge. According to accounts of the period, Dunmore received faulty intelligence suggesting the colonial forces were weak, poorly armed, and ready to collapse under pressure. That intelligence was badly outdated. Colonial forces had spent recent days reinforcing their earthworks and receiving reinforcements from neighboring counties in significant numbers. By early December, roughly 900 colonial militia and continental troops occupied strong defensive positions, dug in behind earthworks overlooking the narrow crossing. On December 9, 1775, Dunmore ordered an assault. British regulars, loyalist militia, and Dunmore's regiment prepared to cross the narrow bridge before dawn. Colonial defenders had partially dismantled the bridge itself, forcing attacking troops to repair the crossing under fire before they could even reach the other side. At dawn, roughly 120 British regulars advanced across the narrow causeway in tight formation, confident in their training and discipline. Colonial defenders held their fire until the British column was fully committed to the crossing, then opened devastating volleys from their fortified positions. The British column had nowhere to take cover. Trapped on the narrow causeway, soldiers fell rapidly under concentrated fire from prepared colonial marksmen. The British commanding officer, Captain Fordyce, reportedly continued advancing even after being wounded multiple times, urging his remaining soldiers forward against impossible odds. Fordyce fell just yards from the colonial breastworks, struck by more than a dozen musket balls in what witnesses described as an extraordinarily brave final advance. With their commander dead and casualties mounting rapidly, the remaining British soldiers broke and retreated back across the causeway in complete disorder. Colonial defenders continued firing as British soldiers scrambled back toward their fort, adding to the mounting casualties among the retreating attackers. A separate group of colonial riflemen positioned to the side added flanking fire onto the exposed British column, compounding the disaster unfolding on the bridge. Survivors who made it back to the British fort arrived shaken and demoralized, having lost their commanding officer and dozens of comrades in mere minutes. In a notable gesture, colonial forces allowed wounded British soldiers to be recovered from the field, treating the fallen with unexpected consideration afterward. Colonel Woodford, commanding the colonial forces, had achieved something remarkable. The entire engagement had lasted less than 30 minutes, from first shot to retreat. British casualties numbered around 60 killed and wounded. Colonial losses amounted to a single wounded soldier, an almost unbelievable disparity for the era. Dunmore, receiving news of the disaster aboard his ship, understood immediately that his position at Great Bridge had become completely untenable going forward. Within days, British forces abandoned their fort at Great Bridge entirely, retreating toward Norfolk in a hurried and disorganized withdrawal from the area. Colonial forces pursued immediately, advancing toward Norfolk itself, Virginia's largest and most important Loyalist stronghold, now stood directly in their path. Dunmore's remaining forces, along with hundreds of Loyalist refugees, crowded into Norfolk itself, uncertain whether the city could realistically be defended. By December 14th, colonial forces occupied Norfolk itself. Dunmore's remaining troops and Loyalist supporters withdrew entirely onto British ships anchored in the harbor. Humiliated and desperate to salvage something from the campaign, Dunmore made a controversial decision that would define his legacy far more than any battle. On New Year's Day, 1776, British ships opened fire on Norfolk itself, bombarding the town in retaliation for its role in his humiliating defeat. Fires spread rapidly through the largely wooden town. Combined with subsequent burning by colonial forces themselves, Norfolk was almost entirely destroyed within days. Virginia's largest city, once a thriving Loyalist stronghold, lay almost completely in ruins, a devastating symbolic conclusion to Dunmore's failed Virginia campaign. News of the victory at Great Bridge spread rapidly throughout the colonies, arriving at a moment when revolutionary morale desperately needed a genuine success story. Some contemporaries began calling it a second Bunker Hill, a phrase reflecting just how significant this small but decisive engagement felt at the time. Dunmore never regained meaningful control over Virginia after that battle. His authority as royal governor existed from that point forward almost entirely at sea. Within months, Dunmore abandoned Virginia's waters entirely, taking his remaining Loyalist forces and formerly enslaved regiment north toward other British-held territory. Virginia's revolutionary government now controlled the colony almost entirely uncontested. The threat of a British-backed royal restoration had effectively been eliminated within weeks. For the formerly enslaved soldiers who had joined Dunmore's regiment, the aftermath proved devastating. Disease spread rapidly through crowded, unsanitary conditions aboard British ships. Smallpox and other illnesses killed hundreds of Dunmore's soldiers in the following months, a tragic outcome for people who had risked everything for freedom. Survivors eventually relocated to other British territories. Their stories largely forgotten for generations, despite representing one of the earliest large-scale emancipation efforts in American history. Historians have increasingly studied this overlooked chapter in recent decades, recognizing its significant place within the broader and more complicated story of American independence. Norfolk was eventually rebuilt, growing over subsequent generations into one of Virginia's largest and most important cities, its wartime destruction gradually fading from public memory. The site of the original battle remains marked today, a quiet reminder of 30 minutes that permanently ended British royal authority throughout the entire colony. Military historians still examine the engagement as a clear example of how fortified defensive positions could decisively defeat conventional infantry assaults during this era. What makes Great Bridge remarkable is not simply the lopsided casualties, but how quickly and completely it reshaped the entire strategic situation across Virginia. One failed assault, lasting less than 30 minutes, effectively ended any realistic chance of Britain reasserting direct royal control over Virginia for the rest of the war. Colonel Woodford's decisive victory established him as one of Virginia's most capable early military leaders, though his own story would later end in tragedy. Woodford himself would later be captured during the Siege of Charleston in 1780, dying as a prisoner of war before seeing the Revolution's ultimate outcome. Great Bridge rarely appears in popular retellings of the American Revolution, overshadowed almost entirely by larger and more famous engagements fought in the northern colonies. Yet, its strategic impact arguably rivaled far more celebrated battles. It secured an entire southern colony for the revolutionary cause remarkably early in the war. The story also forces a more complicated understanding of the revolution itself, one where freedom and loyalty pointed in genuinely different directions for different people. The narrow crossing where it happened looks nothing like a battlefield today. Just a quiet stretch of water carrying traffic that has no idea what happened there. In under 30 minutes, on a narrow wooden bridge nobody remembers today, Britain lost any realistic path back to controlling Virginia for the rest of the war.